In life, we encounter people every day, all of whom have stories to share. We rarely take the time to ask people their personal stories, many of which will touch, move, and inspire us in some way. Matt has a passion for making authentic connections and learning about people from all walks of life. He has lived a life of giving back to the community and making a difference in people's lives. Are you ready to meet fascinating people and hear some inspiring stories? The Matt Hilton Show will introduce you to a world of possibilities you never knew existed. Sit back, be present, and enjoy. Here's your host, Matt Hilton.
Hey everyone, Matt Hilton here, the host of the Matt Hilton Show. Thanks for tuning in today. You don't want to miss this episode. My guest today is a friend of mine who I've met along the way, and he grew up in the Dallas area. He has had multiple tragedies in his life. He has been a member of a band, and he now has a passion about educating people in the financial industry. You don't want to miss the show. Stay tuned from a word from our sponsor.
Inspired, experienced, customer-focused. Find a mortgage that fits your needs with Maria Leach at First United Bank Mortgage, specializing in construction and closing all types of loans, including jumbo, portfolio, conventional, FHA, and VA. A tenured team, outstanding service, competitive programs. Finance your dreams with Maria Leach at First United Bank Mortgage. mleach.firstunitedteam.com, 214-316-7915. mleach at firstunitedbank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
I met this individual at a coffee shop talking about some networking events that, or a networking group that we were involved in. And his name is Forrest Patterson, and he works with Northwestern Mutual. And I'm excited for you to hear his story. Forrest, thanks for coming on board today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah. You're welcome. So as we begin today's show, let's just open up a little bit with a little bit about your background, maybe where you grew up, and are you from Texas? How long did it take you to get here? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I grew up in Richardson.
Okay.
I went to Bertner, played on the golf team.
Okay.
I think I played over $200,000 worth of golf for free. It was awesome. Missed those days, but now I got to pay for it, so I don't play as much. But played golf there, and then went to. I was a lumberjack for a year. At Nacogdoches. For those that don't know, it's Stephen F. Austin, just to make sure. And then I transferred to UT, and I graduated there at UT, so in Austin, not Arlington.
Right. Yeah. And thank you for clarifying that, because when you said you were a lumberjack for a year, I was like, well, I'm going to have to ask him what was like working as a lumberjack. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went to UT Austin and graduated. What was your degree in?
Kinesiology.
Oh, kinesiology.
Yeah.
All right. And for those that are listening or viewing, what is kinesiology?
Study of movement. And when I went into college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, like a lot of people don't know. And so the big thing of the day was physical therapy. So that was a major go with. You could do pre-med with kinesiology. And so I just dove into that, and I just never changed it. I didn't end up being a physical therapist, but I enjoyed it. And but again, I didn't know what I wanted to do until now, what I'm doing. So yeah, takes a while.
And how long did it take you to get to where you are now?
My whole life. I graduated. I was in a band well into high school, and we kind of were in a band as well. And so when I graduated, I just kind of wanted to be poor and be in a band because I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Sure. So
I was in a band called O to B, named after. Are you a Texas Ranger fan?
I am.
Okay.
Yep.
You remember O to B McDowell?
Yep.
Okay. We were named after him. We loved the way his batting stance looked. And yeah.
O to B.
He hit for the cycle. Yeah, anyway. But so I was in a band, went on a couple of West Coast tours, and just trying to be free, I guess. I don't know what else to try to do. But you learn a lot, being, in a band and being around a bunch of guys all the time, and trying to make it work. But how do you want to keep going or?
Yeah. So how much? So what type of music did you play?
It was kind of like, if I had to describe it, I guess acoustic rock.
Okay.
We acoustic, but it was up-tempo college rock, I guess. Anyway, it's the hardest thing to make a living at, right? So you find out really fast if you're good or not, or if you have a chance. Even if you have a chance, you might not make it, right? So, but we did a couple CDs. I only had one CD and then I quit. And I kept going. Okay. They were staying true to it for longer than I did. And my wife that I met in college, she wouldn't marry me until I quit the band. So maybe that's why I quit faster.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
So do you still get royalties from the sale of the CDs?
No. I think the guy, the lead singer, he probably gets most of them. I think he invested in more in the band than I did, so he deserves more for sure. Right. Yeah.
So Otoby. Go get the Otoby CD.
It's on Spotify.
It's on Spotify. There we go. That's fantastic. So you learn a lot. You said when you are in that type of a environment, and when you can imagine being on your own, right, and doing that. So what did you learn? What was the lesson that you learned from that experience of being in that band?
I think it was just, when you first get out of college, you're free. Your mom's like, okay, you have 2 months to get your own place, so it's like that's going on. And then of course, then you're trying to make it work while having a part-time job. I had a part-time job at this place called the Little Gym. Are you aware of that? Yeah. So I did that part-time. So just trying to figure it out. So basically I'd go to work, that Little Gym, all day, and then we'd have practice from like 8 o'clock till 12 every night, and then we have a gig on the weekend. So it was like a lot, so just I think in your 20s you're just kind of just trying everything and trying to figure it out. But it was long days, but it was fun, but even though I was super poor, but I think it's just going through those experiences, or they can really help you later on. Just that work ethic, even if you're not making money, just working at something that you're passionate about.
So taking what you learned during that experience, how can you apply something that you learned during that experience to today? Like, how have you brought that forward into your life?
Well, in terms of music, it's more like therapy now. Okay. It's a way to express, I'm a big believer in like therapy. And I think that's kind of what I used music now. But at the time it was trying to make like a living at it. But now just because you're doing it in life, I think when you go forward, and you might use it in a different way, but that can still be impactful on your life, but just different from when it started off as, for sure. But I don't miss those days. I'm glad I had them now. Yeah, makes you appreciate things for sure.
Most definitely. So you grew up in Richardson, and that's where I live currently. So
all right,
so I'm enjoying it.
All right,
and so you never really left Texas except for maybe during that time of the band?
Yeah. I basically lived in Richardson my whole life, Austin, and then basically moved back after college. I live in Oak Cliff now. I've been there for 20 years. Okay. So, so after the band, I quit the band. My wife
to get married.
My wife that I met at college. We had the same major, kinesiology. We got married, and then the guy that I worked for at the Little Gym, I really loved the idea, and he had the one in McKinney that he was willing to basically sell me. Okay. And so I took that on, and so basically I was commuting from Oak Cliff to McKinney, and have you ever been to a Little Gym, have you seen the thing? Okay, mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had the guitar, so it fit kind of my things at the band, but I was kind of with kids, and you're singing songs that kids love, Twinkle Twinkle, and so I used to teach those classes that have babies, so really like the parent-child classes. Okay. So I'd be doing pullovers in the bar, playing the guitar, very active job. Mm-hmm. And so I own the Little Gym in McKinney, and that's where I think I really learned a lot. When you're a business owner, you learn a lot.
And how long did you own the business?
I owned the business probably for about 4 or 5 years. Okay. And during that 4 or 5 years, I think that shaped kind of the beginnings of kind of who I am now. Because when I dove into it, I mean, working 7 days a week. They have parties on the weekends, classes during the week. You have to manage, all the teenagers and 20-somethings. Mm-hmm. That's tough. You have to run the books, and there's rent. Rent was crazy. Biggest thing that happened to me was I got disabled. I hurt my back washing my dogs because they were muddy anyway. But I tore a disc in my back, and so I became disabled. I couldn't work for 2 years. So that's a big impact on my business, big time.
So you were working at Little Gym when you hurt your back?
I wasn't there at Little Gym. I was at home, but I hurt myself at home, but I couldn't teach classes for 2 years. And so, being a business owner and not, you're just kind of blowing and going as a 20-something, just trying to make it work. And all of a sudden you can't do certain things that you need to do in order for the business to run and be effective and be cost effective. That's where things really whoa, That's why I feel like what I'm doing now, it's like having foresight. I didn't have that at the time.
Right.
Trying to educate people to set things up properly, because, since I'm a financial advisor now in terms of risk management, I didn't have disability insurance, so I loved it at the time, but I didn't have it,
Because
so
nothing's ever going to happen to us.
no,
right?
never,
We're
never
invincible.
I mean, you're going to live forever in your 20s.
Yeah.
Right. Everything's going to go perfect. So that was a smack in the face. And then after I finally got better, then 2008 happened. That's not good for retail. So that was a big smack in the face too. And then so got through that, and then we had our first child that lived for 2.5 months and passed away. And I forgot something earlier that happened, but we can go back to that if you want. But basically,
Sure.
we had our first child had like a chromosome abnormality in terms of like, basically my wife and I, our chromosomes compared side by side. Like I'm normal, which the chromosomes are all there. She's balanced, so on the chromosome, I forgot, it was like 2 or 3, basically they're switched, but they're there. So our child was switched, but everything wasn't there. So when you're balanced, it just makes it harder for fertility. But you can still have a normal life, you're normal, but you just have trouble having kids or whatnot. So he had that mosaic Downs, he had a G tube. He wasn't fit for the world, right? So he lived 2.5 months, and man, when that happens, that you learn a lot about your relationship, just about life and different perspective. I mean, just those years that I was an owner, that I went through that much. I mean, that really, I would never trade for it in the war, because it made me have a different perspective, now. And it's hard. It was really hard, but yeah.
Okay, so if we could pause for a second, because I just want to make sure I've got the time frame correct. So
Right.
you're at My Little Gym. You bought this existing business from someone else, right?
Yeah.
And during this time frame, you've hurt your back.
Yeah.
And you're out of work for 2 years. You have a child, your first child, that lives for 2.5 months. From the back injury to the child being born, what was that time frame?
So I hurt my back in 2006.
Okay.
So when I got better, that's when the financial crisis happened.
Yep.
And then we had, his name was Beck, March of 2009.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like boom, boom, boom.
And you're how old when Beck passes away?
Oh, I was 32.
Okay.
Yeah, 32. Yeah.
That is a lot for someone to go through
Yeah.
in your late 20s.
Yeah. It was a lot. And I forgot to mention.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
That's-
It's funny because you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I got married in April of 2002.
Okay.
No, 2003. Sorry, 2003. And in June, I was at Little Gym at lunch at Freebirds. The Freebirds off of Lovers next to the Central Market. I get a call from my stepfather's partner. He's a lawyer. They have a practice together, and he's like, "Forrest, you need to get home right now. Mike's been in an accident. He's been in a plane and he passed away." So raced back to my house. My mom's house lived on the M streets, and I have 3 sisters. I had to call everybody to let them know that our stepdad, who was more of a dad to me than my real father. That was the first tragedy in my life, right? Of course, I skipped over that, but that was huge, right? Because I had to call everybody wherever they were. Couldn't get a hold of one sister; she was in Mexico, and I just remember like calling everybody and then just breaking down. And one was at a Starbucks in San Francisco. One was on the road, and she almost wrecked because it's just that day was burned. I mean, there's a lot of days burned, but that was like the first day that was like, I will never forget that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just, that was just a big hazy moment for me. I think the first of what was to come later, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was crazy.
So I can't even imagine, right? I mean, going through anything like that, much less being in your 20s and you're formative years, as a adult, right? So, and you're newly married.
Right.
So, and is that the same woman that had Beck? So were you married?
Yeah,
is this the same?
Yeah. I've been married
you've been
her
married-
since
okay.
2003.
Since 2003.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be 20 years next year. So.
Wow. So y'all have been through a lot. So y'all have been through all this together.
Yes, all of it. That was the beginning of our relationship, and we got that huge curveball and coming in. But the thing is, like, I've been through all that, right? That's a lot. But when you go through grief like that, you meet other people with grief as well, and it can always be worse. I think that's what I learned through all that, because I've met other people that I thought, like, gosh, a lot's happened to me, especially like through how to losing Beck. I'm like, God, I lost my stepdad, I got disabled, business, blah blah. But it can always be worse. It can always be worse. And it's how you respond, because you cannot control everything. You learn that fast. I did in my 20s. But control what you can control, and somebody always has it worse than you, I think,
That is an interesting perspective.
It can always be worse.
It can always be worse. and
Always.
you're right, it can always be worse. One thing that I heard and I'm just going to put this in real quick, is Sunday at church services. Our preacher was talking about the love of God and how God loves us, unconditionally, and the love of God should come through us and love others as well. And then at the end, he talked about the women's basketball coach at Duke, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, she was giving this talk to her players, and she said, life is never easy. We say that life is going to be easier when we get married, or life is going to be easier when we pay off school debt, or life is going to get easier when fill in the blank, right? And she said, life is never going to get easier. You've just got to learn how to do hard better.
Yeah.
Right?
Hard better, I like that. Yeah.
And so that's what I'm hearing from you is life didn't get easier for you. Like, you learned how to do hard better, because that's some hard stuff to go through.
Yeah.
For anybody. I don't care what age you are.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think age it has something to do with it because of maturity of the brain and all that stuff. But I think that, that's hard for anybody to go through.
Yeah. But when you're going through it, you're like, well, it's got to be worse. That's what I always think. I'm like, well, it can always be worse,
So how did you get through it? I know you said you find people that are going through grief as well. So did you find support groups to help? Did you have you said you grew up in the area. So, did you have family and friends that surrounded you and helped you through it?
I did. I have a good support system, I think. And I think, everybody deals with grief differently. And that's what I've kind of learned. But there was also, I think it's because it's funny how me and my wife have been through all this together, and we're on the same journey, but we're dealing with it in different ways. I think for me, like, if you're looking in from the outside in, you look to me and go, he's handled it really well, and maybe this is, I always question, I'm like, I always think about my childhood and my dad, and how I basically, like, I don't talk to my dad anymore at all. Like, I basically just shut him out, like, after the wedding. But it's like I'm really good at putting up walls, and I don't know, maybe that helps me get through stuff like this, but also it also maybe pushes down a little bit thing as well. So, I did a little therapy and stuff, but my everybody responds differently, and it's I think it just makes you kind of analyze how how did I get through it, and do I need to really, how deep do I need to go to really feel like I've healed from this,
Right.
And I think that answer is different for everybody, but I think if you don't deal with certain things, it comes out in different ways, and that's what I've kind of found out just from my wife and I, and how we've handled all this stuff that we've been through, and we've handled it differently, but we've done it together. But therapy's in there, and I always feel like if you dig deep, nothing really bad can happen from it. I think you become stronger by doing that, because I've seen some people that they don't deal with it, and some areas of their life it flares up somehow, no matter how much you push it down. So I think that that's what when I look back, I'm like, you were analyzing why was it so not easy for me, but how did I get through it? I felt like people like, oh, you're strong, but at the same time you're like, well, maybe that's bad. Maybe I needed to feel more, maybe to work it out. So you're always constantly like, well, God, why am I handling this so well? Supposedly, is it gonna, resurface somewhere else? I'm not handling that well, right?
Right.
So it's just interesting, just how you're brought up, and I don't know. It's really easy for me to shut my dad out and never really talk to him again because it's healthy for me. But at the same time, I'm like, why is that so easy for me to do that? At the same time, I don't know. But it's a constant journey trying to figure out yourself and how you respond to certain things, and did you do the right thing, or maybe you're always questioning yourself, I think.
And what you say as far as everybody handles things differently. I mean, I hear you, and I feel like that I handle things similarly, right? As far as not keeping the emotion in, right? Going through the emotion at the time, but then being able to let it go.
Yeah.
And moving on, right? And there are some people that keep the emotion in and they hang on to that emotion, right? And it gets them into a bad place sometimes, and they aren't able to get out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that is, but I have that ability to do something similar to what I hear you saying. Do you ever, when you go through these tragedies, right, and you handle it in that way, do you ever feel that or hear of people saying, he should be handling it differently, or why isn't he more upset than what he is? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What is your response to that? Because there are some people that just don't understand.
Yeah. I think my response to that is just that I think what I said earlier is just everybody handles it differently, and but I think you should always like how I reacted this way. Why did I react this way? Is it something that I was brought up with? Or I think just constantly, for me, some people just say, oh, don't want to even address it. But I think you can handle something by addressing it and still deal with it well. But sometimes they just, shove it aside. But I feel like it's there. I don't know. There's a book that I read that really helped me, even though it was later, right before Beck happened. There's a book called New Earth, Eckhart Tolle.
New Earth, okay.
Have you heard of that? And, that really helped me kind of have a good frame of mind. I feel like I was made to read that book before Beck happened, because it helped me to go through all that. Maybe because I was in Thailand reading it, they were like, "Oh, this is so great, so spiritual." All of a sudden, or whatever. But that book really helped me get my mind right, because I feel like Mike was really, when my stepdad died, that was more traumatic than response. I just remember being a big haze. And Beck was a big haze too, but I felt like I dealt with it better because I had a better mindset. So it was all about just kind of. It's very kind of science-based about, in terms of responding, and but that book really helped me get my mind right, and I think that really, again, addressing it but not pushing it down. Why am I acting this way? And figuring that out. So.
And between the time that your stepdad died and Beck was 6 years, right?
Yeah. Roughly,
ish.
Yeah.
So you had some life experience to, I think, help you. With your mindset, right? And you've read the book, you lived life a little more, and wow. So once Beck passed, what happened after that? You said you had my little gym for 5 years. So did the gym?
I basically, basically I was like, what? I'm not going to pay this off until I'm this age. The way we're going here. So I was like, so I talked to the guy I bought it from, and I was like, I can't do this. So he allowed me to hand it back to him, basically. I didn't have to declare bankruptcy or anything, but I did have to pay money to get out of it, but at least I had no debt to my name, and
Sure.
that was nice. Basically, I handed it back to him, and then paid like $25,000 for the transfer fee. So, but I wasn't taking a salary the whole time, just trying to pay down my note. So I always chalk it up to like, you know what? I learned a lot. Because you think about like how much money you didn't earn, and all that work, and nothing happened, and you just you had to pay money to get out of it. You're like, that would drive you crazy. But did I learn about being a business owner? Yeah, I failed. But you always hear, oh, you learn more when you fail. That's true. But it's nice to succeed every once in a while. But I definitely learned. But I'm taking that. I feel like now as you're going through that, man, I've definitely learned a ton.
So is there anything that comes to mind that you'd like to share that you did learn, like specifically? What did you bring from that experience to today?
I learned that I think you learn what you don't want to do in life. Like I remember my first job was shoveling manure, cleaning horse. I was at a barn. My mom used to ride horses a lot, and that was my first job because I couldn't get a job at the mall, which I really wanted to do that job at the mall.
But instead you're shoveling manure.
Yeah, shoveling manure. And I definitely I do not want to do that. And then I got a job at being a bartender. I was like, I do not want to do this for the rest of my life. And so what I learned at Little Gym, I think, is I do not want to manage people. I want to manage me, because I can handle that, right? And I don't want a business that's 7 days a week. So I think all my jobs is like I find out I don't want to do this, and I didn't want to be in a band because I knew the lifestyle and how hard it is, and it's luck, a lot of luck, and we weren't that great. That kind of helps too. You're not that great. But yeah, you learn what you don't want to do. I think that's what's cool. It's like when your kids are doing stuff, you try everything just to see what they don't like, to see what they like. That's important,
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I learned from that. I don't want to do that, even though I really enjoy the concept of playing music and the kids, and it's probably made me a better father, right? And so after Little Gym, I handed it back. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I was really good at teaching classes. I was good at connecting with parents and kids, right? So I was basically his director of training for a couple years. And then I had my first child that was healthy. His name's Jude. And right after he was born, I really was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the worst dad ever if I have to do kids during the day and kids at night.
Right.
So that's when I'm like, what am I going to do? And so that's when I was like trying to figure out, okay, I know I don't want to do this, right? I want to do something else. And that's when I met a gentleman in my neighborhood that had an agency dealing with the senior market in terms of like Medicare, long-term care, annuities. So kind of the financial services industry, kind of my introduction to that. So I jumped into that profession, that's kind of where my entry, kind of where I am now, doing that.
And so you've been doing that for what, about a decade or so?
Yeah, since 2013 is when I kind of entered into this industry, and I love it. I do. You finally find what you like by doing stuff that, don't want to do that. It takes a long journey to get there.
Yeah.
I definitely learned that I do like helping people, but in different ways. I like helping kids and parents be better parents and all that, and teaching them stuff on the bar, but teaching them, how to sing Twinkle Twinkle. Anyway, but when I did that, now I went from like basically serving kids and parents, now going to seniors, the other end of the spectrum.
Right.
So in that job, I would drive all over Oklahoma and Texas, basically a 5-hour radius around Dallas, and I'd make appointments, basically, call people on Monday and Tuesday in Odessa, Texas, for making appointments Wednesday and Thursday. And then that's when I heard the statistic that really shocked me. Like if you had to guess, when people turn 65, like how many of them, what percentage of people when they turn 65 have more than like $40,000 of income in retirement? Like, what would you say?
That number's going to be really low.
Yes.
So I'm not going to say something like 60%.
And this was a long time ago. Maybe it's changed, but back then I heard it was like 2%. It's ridiculous. A lot of people guess, 20, 30.
Yeah.
But when I heard that, I was like, wow, if I can literally help 98 out of 100 people, if they let me, right? Then, because what I saw in the senior market is that people don't plan. They live paycheck to paycheck, and then they end up on Social Security, and that's it. I mean, that's the statistic that you saw, and I saw it firsthand going to these houses, and I saw, well, that's very sad. If they could have done a couple things in their 20s, 30s, 40s up to this point, they'd be in a totally different, position. And so that's what got me inspired to be a financial advisor now. First helping the senior market, and then seeing what was happening there. I hate to say boomers, whatever, right? I'm an Xer. What are you?
I don't know what
You're
I am.
an X. You're an X,
Am
aren't you? I don't know. Are
73?
you? Yeah, you look great. You look fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. 19 birth year 73.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought you.
I'm
Okay,
not
okay.
73.
Yeah, you look great. But, yeah. Either way. Yeah.
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 So you help anybody and everybody now? Like, do you have a certain market that you are a niche that you work?
Yeah, it's basically out of college to 60, 65. I still help seniors. I still have clients that call me, and especially now with Medicare open enrollment, they're like, "What do I do with my drug plan and everything?" So they call me. But now it's more of planning, like making sure that any plan starts with income insurance with disability. So when I was helping the senior market, obviously I was helping just straight up Medicare and all the insurance products. But 4 years in, I just saw it firsthand that I wanted to bring this to a younger market and prevent and really see it, because it was very I would see somebody in Odessa, Texas, I would help them at the time with some Medicare, help them save a little bit, but then I'd never see them again. I'd send them a postcard every year with my family, and I'd have an extra kid building on my cards, but it was I didn't really get to see them year by year, see them grow, and the relationship wasn't very good. That's why 4 years in, I started okay, I want to be a financial advisor and prevent all the stuff that I was seeing in the senior market.
Right.
So that's when I started basically going back to college, getting my designations, my investment license, all that stuff that you need. And there's a lot of tests to take in this industry.
There are a lot of tests. Yeah.
A lot of tests. So I started that probably in 2016, 17, and then finally got everything in order right during the pandemic. So couldn't really be a financial advisor at my old job, so that's when I came to Northwestern Mutual, because I'm a firm believer in risk management first. You can't really, I don't care how well somebody invests for you, if you get hurt, sick, or die, the plan goes kaput. So I love the fact that we have tools there that really help that part of the financial plan. So anyway, but it's been a long journey, but I've again shove the manure and all these jobs, it's kind of left at this point, and I'm always like, oh, I wish I would have started this gig my 22, but
Sure.
I have a different perspective than somebody that maybe started at Northwestern Mutual at 22.
Yeah.
That I can add to to enhance. It's all about perspective. I think with anybody's job, just having perspective is huge.
It really is. I mean, because you're talking to someone who right out of college did sit for his Series 6 and 63 and 7 license, worked for a local firm here in Dallas, brokerage firm, as a stockbroker, and I did that for 6 months.
You got all those
And
tests
I
that you
was
did
like,
for 6 months.
Yeah, and I did it for 6 months, and I was like, and I think a lot of it has to do with the training. Like, I was working for my roommate's dad, who owned a brokerage here, a financial brokerage here in Dallas.
Cool.
And it sounded really cool, right? I was like, oh yeah, this would be great, but there was no formal training. It was just like, here boys, here are some leads, go call them. And I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to say? That was
Yeah.
so scary for me, right?
Yeah.
Of picking up the phone and calling these people who have $1 million, invested with the firm, and making recommendations about stocks and mutual funds and this, that, and
Based on the test you just took.
yeah, based upon the and I'm like, okay, no, I need more training than this. But yet, the pressure of that for me at the time when I was 22, I may have a different perspective if I was to go into it now, right? But at 22, 23, I was like, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, like you say, you go through life and you find out those things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah. And with any job, there's always, things that you love about it, some things that, that you hate about it, but it's the overall, am I making an impact? You have your why, and that the stuff you don't like to do, you do because you know that you're you feel passionate about what you're doing, and that's so important because every part of my job, even from shoving manure, there's stuff I liked about that. I got to listen to music while I worked, which is pretty cool.
Sure.
You know,
And then you got to make music after you did that.
right? I guess pretty poor music, but you know, it's therapeutic nonetheless.
I'm trying to sell some CDs. You're not doing a good job of
No,
that.
ODB was great. I was not the primary songwriter. No, but now I'm in a band. Some people in my neighborhood, we used to get together in the pandemic, but we kind of rekindled that and you know, wrote like 30 songs during the pandemic and kind of dove back into that. That was like more therapy. It was like, there's a lot to write about in the pandemic. A lot. So I dove into a lot of topics during that time, but and I enjoyed it, and you know, and eventually I share them on Facebook just to my friends, like, don't go past that because you know, it's very personal. Yeah. You're being vulnerable, you know, and I think that's one thing I've learned too, just through all my things, is being vulnerable is super. There's power in that, you know, and this job makes you super vulnerable. I mean, because you have to call people, you know.
So when you say vulnerable, what does that mean to you right now? When you say that's...
It means being vulnerable is being willing to people to be not nice to you, to say, you know, that you're how you're perceived, you know, and you realize fast, whether it be music, you know, singing a song, oh, that song sucks, or, you know.
Right.
But you know, with music, it's like, you know, there's so many types of music, and everybody likes different types of music. So don't worry about that they think it sucks, because there's so many things out there, right? So, but if you're finding some things in it that speak to you, who cares, right? Yeah. And so I learned that through that, and through my job now, it's you know, people. I know that I can help people. Now, will they let me? I don't know, but I know that they're not lining up out the door for me to help them. I have to go talk to people.
Go find them.
I have to be vulnerable. I have to be willing for people to, like, you're a jerk. Well, I'm not. I'm really trying to help you, but that's fine. It's okay, you know. Right. You can't control what people think about you, but you have to feel like you're making a difference, I think, and you have to look at the big picture and all that. But that's being vulnerable, is being able to be okay with what people think about you, and you know, because it's easy to be like, I'm not going to engage. Because I'm afraid what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's easy to hide behind a mask or a wall, whatever you want to say, right? In figurative language, right? Yeah. And not put yourself out there. Yeah. But when you put yourself out there and take down that wall or mask, that's when the vulnerability really happens.
And I'm an introvert. You know, everybody's different about, like, if you're an introvert, extrovert. You know, introvert. I've always been like kind of shy, right? But I remember I was a kid. I hated that I was shy. You know, I just hated. I was like, whenever it was really hard for me to be outgoing, but I remember whenever I did it and I built up the courage to do it, I always felt really good, you know. And then you can charge your batteries. You know, that's an introvert to do. They can be extrovert, but then they have to recharge, right, or something. Yeah. But I always that's one thing, is like, being vulnerable is really hard for me, but I've always loved when I am, because I've always learned from it. But your first initial thing's like, you know. But getting over that it's huge, right? But it's a constant battle, being an introvert. But Are you an introvert or extrovert?
So I'm an extroverted introvert.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm one of those who needs to go charge their battery every now and then, right? Yeah. But you know, I can go out and meet a stranger and be okay, and you know, turn it on when I need to. Right. But then I like to go home and just have my space and just for it to be quiet. Yeah. Right. So yeah, those things happen for sure. So that's a wrap for today's show. Stay tuned for next week for part 2 of our interview with Forrest Patterson. Thank you for tuning in.
If you'd like to contact Matt, or know a fascinating person with an inspiring story that would make a great guest, reach out to the show at themattHiltonshow@gmail.com.